Good afternoon. Good afternoon. One of the perks of being a musician is that we get to travel around the world. So here I am in the Gobi Desert at the foothills of a sand dune, and my audience are the nomadic people of Mongolia and the horses that brought them in equal numbers. As musicians, we get to travel physically, but we also get to travel in our imaginative world. As a child, I moved back and forth between Japan and the United States, and I was always fascinated with how my cultural heritage played a role in who I am and how that might inform me as a musician. Being an interpreter of both traditional and contemporary repertoire, my main aim after I learned the bulk of the notes and what's on the page is to get inside of the composer's life and mind and heart. What was the composer experiencing when they wrote the work? What were their emotional state? What was going on historically? Those are all the questions I ask myself. And for the purposes of this presentation, how does the cultural background of the composer manifest themselves in their music? This has been a central path of my research for a number of years. There are many ways in which a composer could represent their cultural language in their music. In this excerpt that you're about to hear, you will hear composer Zarina Mirshakar, a composer from Tajikistan, explore scale patterns and melismatic long song form using Western instruments, namely violin and piano. This recording is from my upcoming solo CD, Music from Central Asia. Circling back to my own background and cultural heritage, I was curious about how music of composers from Japan, especially the ones that chose to leave Japan and came west, whether the US or Europe, how their music illuminated Japanese aesthetics. They can appear in many different forms. It can be in the usage of the instruments, for example, employing koto, Japanese zither, or shakuhachi, the Japanese bamboo flute, or using compositional techniques of Japanese court music. As I researched about this further, and this actually became my doctoral dissertation topic, an overarching theme, concept of ma, appeared in all of the works I studied. I could be here for another 3 hours if I decide to delve deeply into that topic, but if I had to narrow it down to one sentence, it is the awareness and placement of time and space. concept of ma appears in all forms of art, dance, theater, literature, visual arts, architecture, and we Japanese recognize it in our daily lives. In music, it can appear in the form of playing around with passage of time and repose. In this next excerpt you're about to hear from Wave Mechanics 2 by Karen Tanaka, you'll hear punctuated chords against shimmering fast notes and how that plays into Karen Tanaka's concept of time and repose. This is from CD of my collection of works, electroacoustic works by women composers. And this particular performance is from Lausanne, Switzerland. We're now moving on to Argentina. As mentioned earlier, one of the tasks of being an interpretive musician is to go inside the life of a composer. In this next work, I imagine myself sitting in the living room of composer Pablo Ortiz. Pablo writes, "When I was 14 years old, my uncle, who at the time was going through a very tango-esque divorce, moved into my parents' house, bringing with him his record collection. Every afternoon, he sat and listened to his tango records, reminiscing about happier times." For Pablo, the many hours of listening to tango music with his uncle informed his tango and milonga-inspired works. We all recognize how our memories play a role in who we are and our consciousness. Our surroundings, our experiences, our language, the festivities we embrace, the food we eat, they all inform and are inextricably tied to how we think, how we feel, how we act, and how we produce. Thank you all so much for taking a musical journey around the world with me. We're making one more stop, and I'll be playing Sentimental from Five Little Milonguitas by Pablo. This is from, as was mentioned, my Sueños Místicos CD, works by South American composers. And as you listen to this performance, I hope that you'll take one last trip with me to Pablo's living room with his uncle in Buenos Aires in 1990s.